Jesus, this is another video. Hello, it's been a while, and I've moved as well, but I'll get onto that in the next episode. I'd have done this sooner, but I got conjunctivitis, and you wouldn't want to have seen my horrible, red, scary zombie eyes, so apologies for that. So at the end of April, myself, Sasha, Michelle, Joe and Kai went off on an 11-day trip around the Baltic states and Finland. Shout out to Violetta, who was kind enough to give me the Thursday off. So on the Thursday we flew off to Vilnius. Arriving in Vilnius airport, it feels like an airport, but once you go out the front it looks like a train station. It's very weird. Vilnius is a pretty chilled out place. It's kind of more like a big town than a city really. So that evening we went out for a nice meal. We had traditional Lithuanian food, including mead, which is basically, if you don't know, kind of like a honey beer, but it's just sort of honey alcohol. Then we went back to our hostel, which had a deconstructed rocket launcher. So the next morning we went out on a guided tour of Vilnius. The first place they took us to was a little independent republic that still pays its taxes to Vilnius. So this is a little republic for artists, and their parliament is also a bar, so a parliament, shall we say. We saw the republic's constitution, which included lines like everyone should have the right to have a cat, and then we went to the Jewish ghetto. This was kind of personal for me because I played a technical vice cop in a play that was set in that very ghetto. So to see it in real life was very moving, and it gave you a deeper understanding of what it was actually like. So Lithuania was pagan until the Germans came in the 1100s and made it Christian. As a result, you'll see a lot of churches in Vilnius. When the communists took over, however, religion was banned, so a lot of these churches were given no use. One was turned into a basketball court, and another was made into a museum of atheism. So we got some lunch, and then we walked in the pouring rain. Drenching, pouring, horrible rain, all the way to the KGB museum. We stopped to take a picture of Sasha for his upcoming indie album, maybe. So the KGB museum is very detailed, and I'll be honest, it's quite uncomfortable going there. You learn about all sort of the hardships that Lithuania went through during the communist occupation and also through the Second World War as well. The scariest bit is going downstairs to the old prison cells which have been sort of restored. There's a padded cell where it said torture happened. There is a water confinement, which is pretty horrible. But then there's a soundproof execution room, and that was quite difficult. But if you're in Vilnius, you must go there. You must go there. I can't stress that enough. You must go there. The next day, we took a 5-hour bus to Riga. Riga's got really good food, and the hostel we were staying in was really good as well. We got free waffles for breakfast. That's what we want. While we were there, we met up with Pandora, who we'd also met in our Vilnius hostel, and also a guy from Derby called Elliot, who is a bit of a legend. Riga is famous for its Art Nouveau architecture that can be seen all over the city. Also in the park there's a giant space monkey, which is the best thing ever. Also a building that looks like the Palace of Culture and Science in Warsaw, but isn't the Palace of Culture and Science. It's also no longer occupied. Another attraction in Riga is the massive indoor market. There's fresh meat, fresh fish, a lot of veg, and it's good. Later on in the day, we went off to the Open Air Museum, which is basically just showing how people in Latvia used to live in around the 1800s and earlier. Took quite a few good photos there, and then after spending our time there for an hour moseying around, looking at things, we went home on the bus. I mislaid my ticket on the bus, almost got fined, quite a big fine, but I managed to find it in my pocket. So after Riga, myself, Sasha and Kai flew to Tallinn, and Michelle and Joe took the bus. We stayed at a hostel called Fat Margaret's, which was named after a tower called Fat Margaret. So myself and Kai had a little sleep in the hostel while Joe, Michelle and Sasha went off somewhere else. And then we walked to the Olympic rowing pier that was built for the 1980 Moscow Olympics. The next day we were up bright and early, mostly at Michelle's command, to go to a walking tour in the town. We found a coffee shop called Caffeine, which is the most honest branding ever. Got a really good view of the city. Our tour guide showed us a plaque of Boris Yeltsin, commemorating his help in the peaceful transition to Estonian independence. She also talked about how some people in Estonia like him and some people in Estonia hate him. And just as she said that, an old man just looked at us and said, "Yeltsin," and spat on the thing of Yeltsin. The next day we went to another open air museum because we liked the first one so much, and it was quite nice, chilled out, nice walk. That evening we went to a bastion called Kik in de Kuk. This was built during the early German occupation of Estonia. Kik in de Kuk means peek in the kitchen. So this refers to kitchen chimneys being wide and soldiers being able to stand on top of the bastion and look down into people's kitchens through the wide chimney hole. Unfortunately, it's spelt rather more like kick in de cock, so we couldn't really resist a photo opportunity there, could we? We then went to bed and then woke up the next day and explored the hipster district of Tallinn. So we saw a warehouse full of sort of hipstery arts and crafts, things like that, recycled clothing, honey products, a lot of craft beer in one shop. And then we walked back up to the old town and met this sassy seagull. Joe, Sasha and myself went to the old chocolate factory. Here we had a fashionable tea and a fashionable coffee and a fashionable hot chocolate, and pretended we were classy people in the 20s. Later that evening, all of us walked out to the rowing pier and watched the sunset go down as we got a little bit slightly drunk. The next morning, at 5 in the morning, me and Kai went to see the sun rise, and then we headed on our boat to Helsinki. Helsinki arriving by boat is quite frankly just bloody lovely, and then Helsinki not arriving by boat, as in walking around Helsinki, is also bloody lovely. Helsinki's a really chilled out place and the coffee's fantastic. Our hostel was really nice, if a little expensive, but then everything in Helsinki is quite expensive. So during our first evening we sort of walked around, got to know our surroundings, found the place where Sandstorm was filmed, looked at the lovely architecture, walked through a really nice park, sat there just contemplating life/relaxing for a bit, found a really cool Art Deco Lutheran church, which kind of looked like an evil villain's headquarters from the 30s, but the place looked awesome. The next day we woke up bright and early and went to the Nuxio National Park. Sadly, because me, Joe and Michelle were staying at a different hostel to Kai and Sasha, we got separated. So we took a train and a bus, and eventually we met up at the centre there. Then we went on a really nice long hike, beautiful Finnish countryside, just bloody lovely. Lots of good views, lots of pine trees, lots of lakes. In some places the ice hadn't even melted, which is quite interesting. Then we got to a pontoon that led out onto a lake, so we sat there for a bit. Then we had a competition to see who could keep their feet in the freezing cold water the longest. Kai dropped out first, then Joe, then Sasha, so it was down to me and Michelle. But Michelle, being from Canada and more used to this sort of thing, she won. Anyway, we got back to the hostel that evening and just chilled out for the rest of it. The next day, Joe got a haircut, much to our amusement. We saw the Prime Minister's house where there was just a dude chilling on the steps, because you can do that in Finland. And then we just did some shopping. Then we finished off the day by getting a really nice Indian meal which had a 15% student discount. And the next morning we woke up early, grabbed a coffee, got on the train and flew back to Warsaw. And to reality. Thanks for watching, and next episode shouldn't be too long.